what really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Now, a lot of people were thinking this nonsense with United Airlines was a distraction, but it does seem to be going from bad to worse, and I think it reveals a lot about America's corporate culture. First of all, that United Airlines have these policies of overbooking airplanes and then just kicking people off. And so they had this video of this doctor who was trying to get to some patients who paid for his ticket and did not want to surrender his seat. United went on in and said, we're overbooked. We need some people to voluntarily surrender their seats so we can have a standby crew come on board the plane. And nobody volunteered, so they just picked a guy at random. And it turned into this debacle. It got videotaped. It got on media. The guy is suing. And so what do? They turn around and they try and smear the guy to make it look like somehow he deserved it. This is a guy who's 69 years old. And they went on out there on the attack. Oh, he did this years ago, and he did that. He's not a nice person. He's got anger management issues. It's all his fault. And, of course, the backlash against United has been horrendous. They've taken a major hit in their stock prices. And you would think they would have rethought what they were going to do. But no, because over in the Los Angeles Times, they have another story that just happened, where there was this gentleman known as Fearns who was on his way back from the island of Kauai, and he needed to get back in a hurry. So he paid $1,000 for a full-fare, first-class ticket to Los Angeles. He got on the aircraft at Lihue Airport on the island of Kauai and was sitting there in his first-class seat with his glass of orange juice. And all of a sudden, a United employee comes on and says, you have to get off the plane. The plane is overfull. And the guy said, I paid full price for this ticket. I'm not a standby passenger. And then they said, well, we need the seat for somebody more important. United Airlines apparently has a priority list of people, and Fearns wasn't on it. And they threatened him with handcuffs if he did not get off that aircraft. That's twice in a row. Now then, there is a rock band that apparently some years ago they were on tour, they were on United Airlines, and the United Airlines baggage handlers were just throwing the guitar cases into the baggage compartment of the airplane, and they broke the guitars. And so they wrote a song about it. They did a video about it. The video is on the front page of whatreallyhappened.com. And I resonate with this because many, many years ago when I was coming back from my time on the Mississippi Queen, I had a 5-string banjo, and I flew United, and sure enough, they broke it. And I filed a claim, and I never heard from them ever, ever, ever again. And I love my 5-string banjos. What can I tell you? So, we're going to take a phone call from Sherry in Texas. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Mike. Okay, we're dealing with a really egomaniacal tyrant here. And given that, we have to realize, I think, that how could we think that we could find a candidate who could change the system? They're not going to change. We did the best we could, and it won't be for nothing. Already we have these restrictions on immigration. Of course, all this stuff is used against him, but we have families who are willing to put their lives on the line, and he's assured jobs for us and security. I mean, his security is at risk, his financial security, his family's at risk, and we got these things done in spite of it, but they're not going to change. But it won't be for nothing because he's already done some good. Now, whistleblowers, they've come forward and they've helped us a lot, but they're protected by WikiLeaks. And I think that the collapse, I vote for the collapse. I mean, I think that there will be one because this system is not going to give up until there is a collapse. And we have to realize that who else could we have gotten? who would do what he's done so far.
Well, Hillary would have done it. She just would have done it a lot more quickly. And
well, she would have taken us to war.
What we need to remember, okay, we are dealing with money junkies, and it is time to acknowledge that money junkies really are mentally ill, just like a heroin addict, a meth addict, a coke addict, whatever. All they can think about is the next fix. And we've all seen with our own eyes how such people are destructive to their own homes and their communities. The money junkies, people don't see them as mentally ill because they've got the money to dress up and look really good. And people say, wow, I wish I was rich like that. And again, I'm not talking about people who become rich by doing something really well, like a George Lucas, who, by the way, seems to have nailed it with THX 1138, or James Cameron, who's still my favorite film director. I'm talking about the players, the politicians, the Wall Street sharpsters who game the system, who rig it so that money flows out of your pocket and into their pocket, and it's never, ever enough. No matter how much they have, it's got to be more, and war accelerates that process. And so, yeah, they're going to keep on doing what gets them their daily fix without caring that the whole thing could break down or result in a war down the road. It's just like somebody who's shooting that heroin day after day after day, not realizing he's about to be evicted because he hasn't been paying his rent.
That's avarice. That's avarice. It is like a disease.
It is a disease.
You just have to have more. And they're not going to stop, ever. So the collapse is pretty much, you know, if we blow up the whole world, they're not going to be able to succeed. We'll all go under then. They just have to keep this balance through deceit, and they're not going to, we have to realize a lot has been exposed now, and that's good. And he has accomplished some things. And even if he pulls, well, I won't say anything beyond there. I won't say, I'm not going to go beyond the next 4 years because I'm not really sure, but I do think they'll only go down when they can no longer feed that addiction.
Yeah, and they'll do it to their own death. Remember John Belushi? Or any, I mean, drug addicts killing themselves with, the next fix. I mean, that's a common occurrence. And the same thing can happen with money addiction. No, you're not going to die because a pile of gold falls over onto you or something like that. But you can destroy the very economic system that is feeding your addiction. And we're on the verge of doing that right now. Or we can get into a war where we lose and everybody's poor. And that's how dangerous it is. The people who are in charge of our society, our economy, are mentally ill because they're addicted to money, they're addicted to power, they're suffering from narcissistic personality disorder. And again, getting on back to that story we just put out about Harry Reid, where he was actually on CNN telling the CIA, go ahead and lie to Trump, he's too stupid, he'll never figure it out. Because maybe that is part of what happened last week. And Trump had better wake up and realize. I mean, everybody knows the CIA lied to John F. Kennedy over the Bay of Pigs. That's why he wanted to shut them down.
Well, I don't think it takes a stupid person, and I don't think it takes a brave person. No one. They're going to kill you. They'll just get them out of the way. Look at the people who have lost their lives so far.
Yes.
You know, it doesn't take a stupid person. It doesn't take a brave person. No one is going to be able to stop them except a collapse that takes the money out of their pockets because we're not going to be feeding them anymore. And we have to do that within legal bounds or we'll all get, locked up. But it's going to happen.
Now, the problem is they're changing the laws to take away any possibility that we could ever interfere with them. And that's why we have so many laws right now. They're trying to take away freedom of speech. They're using lawfare. They're using economic warfare. They feel that playing dirty is their divine right because it gets them the next fix of money or power or fame that they crave so much. They are seriously mentally ill people.
Yes, they are. And here's one thing they can't dictate against, and that's a neighborly ethic, sharing what we have with other people. That's simple. It's a Christian ethic, but it's also a neighborly ethic. I give some of my squash to my neighbor. Mm-hmm. He gives me some of his big onions that I've never been successful growing. And this is how. And I've got extra. I've got extra okra left over. I say I've got some extra melons. So melons. So we trade. And women there was women that kept each other's children in a neighborhood, and they tried to get them into some kind of channel where they weren't allowed to keep more than 5 children at a time, and they they were taken to court and they won because there was no exchange of money. It's like, it's my turn to keep the kids. You know, there were 5 households. My turn to keep the kids so you can all go to the grocery store without your kids. And there was no money. It was just, it was this neighborly, they were giving of their time.
No, I understand. That's a very big deal out here in Hawaii. We do, you know, a lot of time we buy in bulk. We'll share with the neighbors, and they share with us. It's not even a trade or a barter. It's like, I've got some extras here, take them. And it happens all the time. It's part of our local culture here in Hawaii. But yes, government and corporations want to shut it down. They want every interaction between humans to be for money that can be taxed and monitored and controlled. And yeah, they're going to keep on doing that. I mean, we're at the point right now where we've got heads of corporations saying there is no right to clean drinking water. You should be forced to work to buy it. And next it'll be air. Anyway, listen, Sherry, got to let you go. And we're going to do shout out to our on-air affiliates rejoining the network. It really is very crazy out there, where the ultimate goal is you're not allowed to grow your own food, you're not allowed to grow your own medicine, you're not allowed to provide your own electricity, you're not allowed to do any of that. Anything that you need for your life will come from some corporation that is profiting off of providing you with what you need, even if it's poor quality, like the poor quality vaccines, the poor quality food, the poor quality water coming out of the faucets at Flint, Michigan. How dare you collect rain on your own property? You will buy the money that's coming out of the faucet even if it's tainted with lead. That's where we are. That's how bad the fascism has gotten inside this country right now. Okay, let's see. I'm going to take a story, then we're going to get back to the phones here. The United States' second most hated agency, the Tourism Suppression Agency, or TSA, is now saying it's allowed to poke around inside your underwear and you should just accept it. And they're talking about this elderly lady who went through the scanner, and apparently she was wearing some kind of a napkin that triggered a false positive on the new scanner that's supposed to respect your privacy, but it gets all these false positives. And she was grabbed by a TSA agent, literally choked, and this TSA agent just felt her up inside her underwear without changing gloves, by the way. Those gloves are not for your protection from contagious diseases. They're just there for the TSA, which means that when you are being fondled and grabbed by the TSA agent, you are basically sharing germs with the 10 or 20 people who went through that gate before you. And not only is this abuse illegal and unconstitutional, it's reminiscent of what the Nazis used to do. The Nazis used to just stop people at random and just open up their clothes and make sure they weren't carrying something inside. That's where we are in this country right now. Okay, we're going to take some phone calls. John in Chicago, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Okay, remember what you said last week, who benefits if the U.S. and Russia gets into a war?
Yes.
Israel, right?
Of course.
Now, doesn't Israel, do we not agree? Israel wants Assad gone, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if Tillerson just accomplished absolutely nothing and Russia is sticking with Assad, Israel can't be very happy, right?
Yes.
Okay, so, I mean, you see all these pictures of Putin getting along fine with Netanyahu. I really want to know what's going on. I really do think the only people standing in the way of a global government headquartered in Jerusalem is the people in the United States who have free speech. And I think we are being set up for a war with Russia. Because, I mean, is Israel calling up Trump and saying, get Russia out of Syria for me? We have no idea what the hell's going on.
What's going on is, again, looking at all these pieces we talked about in the show today, Donald Trump is being lied to. He's being manipulated. If you take the stories that are over there at InfoWars, Brennan, McMasters, and McCain organized this false flag. It was launched by drone from a joint Israeli-Saudi base in Jordan, came across the border into Syria, killed a bunch of people, and Donald Trump's White House advisors all said, oh, Assad did it, we're off and running to the races. And so...
Well, that's it. Between that and the Harry Reid quote, then it is time for Trump to lower the hammer on the traitors like McCain, Graham, all the warmongers. It's time for him to lower the boom on all those guys. I hope he does it then. I mean, otherwise
I don't know. He had a golden opportunity to go after the corrupting influences in the government following that Susan Rice revelation and he's dropped the ball on that again. And so apparently Trump is completely co-opted by his own advisors. It was a mistake to let Flynn go. It's a mistake to let Bannon go. Bannon was the only White House advisor who said that this cruise missile attack on Syria was a bad idea, and everybody's out there saying, oh, he's got to go. He's not on board with our policy. And
well, the other problem is, too, with our $20 trillion in debt, we're not going to get our health care reform, and we're not going to get any tax reform if we're in a state of war. So if they keep Trump in a state of war, we're not going to do anything to lower the amount of revenue coming into the government. They just can't.
Yeah, they absolutely can't. Well, they're going to borrow for the war, and we'll be a quadrillion dollars in debt to the private central bankers. And that, of course, is the way it's designed to be. But, again, I understand from Russia's point of view, they don't know who's really calling the shots over here. It's obviously at this point not Donald Trump. It appears to be McCain, McMaster's, Brennan, and Netanyahu, and the White House advisors. And that is a very, very dangerous situation because all of these people, they're looking at their stock portfolios that are loaded up with all kinds of defense contract stock, defense corporation stock. They want to see a war move forward because it's going to make them richer. Netanyahu, of course, wants greater Israel. And it's a very, very dangerous situation. And unfortunately, Donald Trump may be a moderately decent businessman. He is proving himself to be an incredibly weak leader.
Right. Okay. And again, like everybody did say, Tillerson goes over there to Russia with only a month worth of experience. I mean, it's just a joke. But this is
Lavrov chewed him up and spit him out.
You got it. Well, this is Trump's JFK moment. Either he goes up against the machine, or, like you said, there won't be another presidential election.
Well, I think that for a wide variety of reasons. But the thing with Tillerson, it wasn't just his inexperience going up against a career foreign minister like Lavrov. It's the fact that Tillerson was being asked to push a totally bogus position, which was the claim that Assad was gassing his own people, followed up by this ridiculous idea that Putin should drop all of his support for Syria. Neither of those was going to fly. And that's why Tillerson came home empty-handed. Lavrov chewed him up and spit him out like a used piece of gum.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to move to Lance in Coeur d'Alene. Aloha. What is on your mind?
Hello?
You're on the air.
Okay. The first time, I don't know, a few days ago, 5 days ago, whatever, when I heard about Trump firing his advisor, his main advisor that he replaced with McMaster, I also heard the story about his comments about trade with China, because he was meeting with one of their leaders, and also his response to the attack in Syria. And the first thing that popped into my mind is what happened to Ross Perot and the alleged assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan, where they were both threatened, and said, you got to do what we say you have to do.
Well, in the case of Reagan, I think George Herbert Walker Bush wanted a promotion to the Oval Office a little sooner. I mean, he got it eventually, but I think George Herbert Walker Bush was aiming for a promotion, and since George Herbert Walker Bush appears to have been also involved in the Kennedy assassination, shooting at presidents was kind of old hat for him.
Well, my take on that was different. It was that, and this is mainly because, the media and everyone got to the hospital in 10 minutes, and it took him 45 minutes to get there. And when he got there, his wound was from a flechette, not from a .38 pistol that he was supposedly shot with. And when you look at the video footage, it's clear he wasn't shot when he was put in the car. He's with his Secret Service agents. It takes him 45 minutes to get to the hospital. When he gets there, he was not shot with the gun that the man was shooting at him with. He was shot with something else. And then
it was a girl who was shooting at him.
He starts changing.
Oh, I'm confusing. That was the other attempted assassination. All right. Anyway, listen. Got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And before we go back to the phones here, political correctness on display. Apparently, Clemson University is now out there claiming that wanting someone to be on time might be racist. And they spent $26,000 on a training program that includes this claim, that expecting someone to be on time, well, it may not be inclusive. I mean, that is just la-la land. All right, let's see. Back to the phone. Steve in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, that last little bit of humor on being late, racist, I got to tell you a little story on that. I lived in Utah, and a lot of LDS Mormons were there, and they always came late to work, 5-10 minutes late, and they referred to it as Mormon Standard Time, so we always got a kick out of that. Mormon Standard Time.
Well, you know, there's a cultural thing here in Hawaii about Hawaiian Standard Time. Everybody's relaxed and hang loose. But it's a bit unfair because my experience living here in Hawaii is that people, when they say they'll be there sometime, don't expect them to be, too early. But if they say, I will be there exactly at blah, 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 they will be there. There's actually a great deal of punctuality in our local culture. Maybe this relaxed time thing is part of the tourism industry's attempt to make us seem more relaxed than we really are. Anyway, what's on your mind?
Well, a lot of your callers have touched on this JFK thing here, and I thought about this a while back and talked to Ron McDonald about this, but I have a little theory that we understand, we all pretty much understand that JFK was assassinated. It was an inside job. And you mentioned we have 17 intelligence agencies that are currently in the U.S. right now. It's 16 more than we really need. But, successful assassinations all have one common theme, and that means a security lapse has to happen and has to be authorized. I think what's happening here is that I think we've been having this kind of government run for a while. I don't think we really have had a president in a long time. Maybe JFK was our last true president. Maybe that's why he was taken out. He didn't follow the orders. And that the intelligence agencies are actually running the government, and the president is nothing more than a figurehead.
Yeah, that does seem to appear to be what's going on here, and of course that's not what we, the American people, are being taught is what's going on. We don't want a figurehead for an oligarchy that's unreachable and unaccountable for its actions. We demand accountability and transparency. We demand the government agreed to be in that Constitution. And if they want to stand on up there and say we're not abiding by the Constitution, then in effect they're saying we're not a legitimate government, deal with it. And that, of course, is going to lead to other repercussions.
One last thing real quick here. You've had a couple callers calling in about money illness, wanting more, hoarding money. It's kind of like a hoarder of hoarding goods. Mm-hmm. Their hoarding is money and power, and that's an illness. But what about the illness of these people that actually are active participants in carrying out false flag events, targeting innocent people? What kind of illness is that? I mean, how do you get convinced to do these things knowing that you're going to kill innocent people and be part of this whole plan of finger pointing and okay with that? That bothers me that people could actually say, you know what, I'm going to do that. It's the right thing to do. And participate in those events, those false flag events. That angers me and worries me.
Well, there's two phenomena at work there. One is that for enough money, most people will be convinced to do anything. There was the experiment, the Milgram experiment, which said normally moral, honest, ethical people will do bad things if some authority figure tells them to do that. And then you have the true believer phenomenon where if you convince somebody that there's an ultimate good, they'll go along with doing really bad things right now. Lee Remini, when she was doing her specials on Scientology, was saying that these Scientologists were easily convinced to go on out and harass people, break into their homes, break into their computers, because in their minds they believed that in the long run they were helping to make a better world. And as long as they had that belief, anything they were doing right here and right now was acceptable for that greater goal. And unfortunately, it does work. We saw that with a lot of Hillary Clinton's people, and I can imagine that there are a lot of people who are involved in these clandestine false flag operations who are thinking that, yes, what I'm doing right now is bad, but in the long run it serves a higher and more noble purpose. And, of course, it's a crock. Anyway, Steve, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. We'll be back with more phone calls after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Here we're going to go back to the phones. And Mark in North Carolina, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, doing, Mike.
Doing
good.
A
couple questions to you.
Sure.
One is, do you think there's some kind of a connection between certain forms of Judaism and the Wahhabi form of Islam, the Saudi Arabians. And do you think there's a connection between the Talmud, the Jewish Talmud, and the Hadith of Islam, which seem to have certain similarities in the way I think they explain the way the religious beliefs are held?
Well, first of all, I'm not a religious studies expert. I've read the Bible. I've read a little bit of the Talmud when I was married to my first wife. The others I really don't know, and I don't intend to claim I'm some kind of an expert. But I will tell you one thing. When these documents were all being written, there was no such thing as copyright and intellectual property, and the creators of these religious texts did not hesitate to copy things that looked good from other books. For example, in the Old Testament or the Torah, the story about Noah and the flood is lifted pretty much intact from the Epic of Gilgamesh, and that kind of thing was going on all the time. So there's probably huge amounts of cross-pollination in all of these religious texts, and so you're going to find similarities just because of that mechanism.
But the whole thing is, what I'm asking though is, isn't it strange the way it seems like Israel right now and Saudi Arabia, are almost like you'd think they would have one in the same country, the way they're acting in the Middle East.
I think that's more political than religious. I think that's more political than religious. I mean, they're all looking out for their self-interest. Saudi Arabia may be playing nice with Israel because it realizes that if it's not playing nice with Israel, then sooner or later they're going to claim ISIS and Al-Qaeda are inside Saudi Arabia and send in the cruise missiles.
But the other thing I wanted to ask you about is, I would really mention is, who are you talking about again? H.W. Bush?
Yes.
And some of the murders or attempted murders of presidents. Just, so I don't know if a lot of people realize it. Not only H.W. was spotted in Dallas, but also when you go into the closest assassinations where Ford, who was the 2 years he was president, was almost killed twice. Most times by, really crazy women who seemed to me like they were probably hypnotized. Squeaky Fromm and Sergeant Moore.
Yes.
And it came very close. The Squeaky Fromm would have known about the safety on her semi-automatic. Ford would have probably been dead right there. And the other one, but who was the vice president? Rockefeller.
Yes.
And of course, when Reagan was almost murdered, who was the vice president? Bush. I don't think these are coincidences.
No, they're not coincidences, and again, crazed lone nut assassin has almost become a CIA trademark for these things. But again, assassinations are not carried out for just one reason, but assassinations are a fact of life. Kennedys get killed for political reasons. John F. Kennedy was killed because his supporters couldn't control him. Robert Kennedy was killed because they were afraid once he got the authority of the White House, he would reopen the investigation into John's assassination. The incident at the Chappaquiddick was actually an attempt to assassinate the third Kennedy brother, but when Mary Jo Kopechne turned up dead, his chances at the White House evaporated, and they left him alone from that point on. And then, of course, there was John F. Kennedy, Jr., who was going to run for the same Senate seat Hillary Clinton eventually sat in. And it's very obvious that he, too, was the victim of an assassination.
Yeah, but when it comes to Ford was basically a harmless dude.
No, he was not. No, he was not. Gerald Ford was on the Warren Commission. He knew what was really going on there. And Spiro T. Agnew had been forced out of the Nixon administration, and Gerald Ford brought on in just in case Nixon was going to be forced to step down or resign, which ultimately happened, because that way everybody knew that Gerald R. Ford would keep the link between Watergate and the assassination of John F. Kennedy under wrap. And, of course, what Ford did, he came on in, issued general pardons, said our long national nightmare is behind us, and that was the end of any investigations into just why Nixon's people had gone into that Watergate hotel in the first place.
But what I'm saying is Rockefeller wanted something. He wanted to become president.
Of course.
I don't see what Ford was other than to the CIA and other establishment. He did it. He did his job. He did what he was told to do, and that was it. Pardoning Nixon, and I still don't see where he was, a threat to the establishment.
No, in that case, it may have been a chance for Rockefeller to try and grab that center seat. But if you remember that period in our history, there was a lot of assassinations going on. And we may be entering another period of increased wet work. Again, getting on back to what happened to Seth Rich. Anyway, Mark, I'm going to let you go. We're running short on time. I want to take another phone call. Katie down in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me on. First off, I want to say I like that picture on the front of your website. Trump all suited up, boots ready to go on the ground. Oh, yeah, I love it. Hopefully he's going to, if he allows us to get into war, his butt is going to, let them all fight their own wars, as you know. Okay, another thing is, don't you think we're giving Trump too much latitude here? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, he is part of the establishment. He's not some guy that's getting, supported. Well, and I think he was before, Mike. I mean, look at his background. I mean, how do you declare bankruptcy 9 times and come out clean and a billionaire? Come on. I mean, you're in with the money junkies, just like, we see. I mean, he filled the swamp. So, I just think, look, how about if we just quit voting? Like you were talking to that earlier caller, which I really, really liked his comments, about, you got, these agencies, unconstitutional agencies, 16, 17, he said, whatever, CIA, FBI. They're not to exist, and the federal government has breached their contract, which is that Constitution. We have no government. We have none. So I don't know why people continue to go out and act like we do by voting. To me, it's I don't understand it. Why do people keep voting? Do you know?
Well, they keep voting. Well, we did, in fact, succeed in overcoming the election fraud last year because they really did want Hillary Clinton in there ahead of Trump. Trump won, and he's obviously been co-opted. And so it reinforces the fact that who we choose for president really isn't that important. It is a systemic problem, and the system itself has to either be changed or, failing that, it's got to be brought down. Or let's be more accurate, it has to be allowed to collapse, which it seems well on its way to doing. I am seeing so many parallels between what we're going through right now in this country and what was happening in the Soviet Union just before it fell apart over there.
Absolutely, and thank God this country is armed to the teeth. I mean, and I think it's going to take the people. It's not going to be we vote one man in and he fixes everything. It's not going to happen.
No, obviously that was the lesson we got from here. I mean, we worked really hard to get the Hillary-Bush cartel out of power, which is really what my focus was on this last year, and we got Trump on in, and all of a sudden, in the space of a week, he is co-opted. And I actually got an email from somebody responding to my Westworld joke from earlier in the show saying, are we sure that's really the same Donald Trump who was running for campaign last year? I think that's getting a little bit out there. I was trying to be funny, and apparently some people took it seriously.
Let's keep in mind, too, we've got two factions at play here. You've got the communists, the Obamas, Hillary's, and then you've got the socialists, the Trumpsters. I mean, those people are vying at the top. You and I are down here at the bottom, so those two powers are fighting. So the communists are I mean, they're mad. They're angry that this happened. But, I don't want international socialism either.
Well,
I say, don't
hang on a second. Hang on. Okay, I think you're misapplying the labels. First of all, this country has gone fascistic. And the argument wasn't over whether we're going to be capitalistic, fascistic, or communistic. The argument is over who gets their hands on the controls in order to milk the most profit out of it. And the reason Obama and Hillary are angry is because they're not in that position where they can sell access and sell secrets. I mean, look how much money the Clintons made while they were in office. Now they're out of office. The money supply has dried up. Same thing with Barack Obama. That was what the fight was really about. Who's going to be on the receiving end of all that graft and corruption?
That's right. Why is Hillary still walking around? Trump said, I watched him on TV, if I were president, you'd be in jail right now.
Yeah, that's another one of his promises I wish he would keep.
Me too. All right, thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks. We're going to take Dan in Canada. Aloha. What is on your mind today?
I wanted to talk about a subject that sort of got overlooked because of the Susan Rice stuff and the Syria bombing and stuff like that. It was this guy named Michael Kadar. He was a 18 or 19-year-old dual Israeli-American that called in 120 bomb threats in 33 states, including Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Europe. using voice masking software to make him sound like a woman. And he called these Jewish community center and said, "We're going to bomb you."
Mm-hmm.
So apparently his father was arrested also, and his father is a computer expert. So they're telling us that this kid has autism and a brain tumor, and he didn't know what he was doing.
No, that's ridiculous. He's got a Bitcoin account worth millions, and apparently he and his father are computer criminals, and they were making huge amounts of money and doing all kinds of nasty things. But we're supposed to feel sorry for him because he's autistic. He had his vaccinations, and they're playing for sympathy. And yes, the story has gone away, not so much because of Susan Rice and Syria, but because the reaction to the story of, oh, this kid did all these terrible things, and he made all this huge amounts of money, and he may have been paid by a third party to make these bomb threats. They wanted it to go away because the public reaction to this, oh, he's autistic and his brain tumor, was a collective, oh, come on now. And so that had to go away. And it is not uncommon to see the news being managed to drive a failing story out of public view with a new story, which is why I think with the collapse of this Assad gassed his own people, 3 strikes and you're out, I think that's going to accelerate the rush to attack North Korea.
Exactly. It was weird, like the bombing threats, and then there was a Jewish cemetery that got knocked over by the wind, and they said, oh, it's, these radical right-wing people like Steve Bannon. They said, this guy was, he worked for Breitbart, and Breitbart was founded by a Jew. So I don't see the connection there.
No,
Trump apparently...
Here's what's going on, okay? All of these lies and propaganda are being thought up by all these individual players. There's no real coordination. And one of the mistakes the propagandists did make was turn over the creation of propaganda to advertising agencies and public relations firms like Hill and Knowlton. And institutionally, these are places that don't think long-term or holistic view. It's always a short campaign. 1 or 2 ads, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, maybe a 3-week campaign. Then everything's wiped clean and they start all over again. And that is why we see the propaganda being inconsistent, contradicting itself, and the attitude is, well, forget about what we told you yesterday. This is what we want you to believe today. And, of course, that doesn't really work because we remember what we were told yesterday. We remember what we were told in 2013. We remember what we were told in 2014. And we look at that entirety and we realize we are being fed a huge nonstop diet of USDA choice bovine excrement. We are the most lied to people on the face of the earth, and it's time to acknowledge that and decide what we're going to do with it. Are we going to continue to work underneath a government that lies to us about everything? More importantly, do we want our children to have to grow up with a government that lies to them about everything to get their money and their obedience and their involvement in wars of conquest? And I think for most parents the answer there is going to be no. I don't want my children growing up under such a government. I want them growing up under the government described in that Constitution.
Exactly. I mean, the media is such a huge part of how people just form their opinions, and unfortunately,
not as much anymore.
You.
Not as much anymore. They're losing their influence. Absolutely.
Just another quick note on this Michael Kadar. Supposedly he's selling all these passports and visas, and those are hard to make. I'm sorry, but if you're an 18-year-old kid, you don't have connections to people with making false passports. I mean, is there any Mossad connection to this kid, or are they just using him as a
There could be. There could be. The Mossad loves to fake passports. They love to steal other people's passports. There was a big stink a few years ago down in New Zealand where Mossad agents were caught trying to steal New Zealand passports to use as cover for their covert operations around the world. And so, yeah, to me, it sounds like this kid did have some pretty serious resources behind him.
Unbelievable. Anyways, I thought I'd mention that.
Okay. Well, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to fit in one more call before the commercial break. Christy in New Mexico, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I want to respond to two of the people who were speaking about the collapse and hoping the collapse comes. I mean, we're in the collapse.
Yes.
But worst psychopaths will take over because they always have a plan. And we, the people, do not have a plan. And I believe that it will overturn and overturn. I believe that we're at the end of the pyramid scheme, the pyramid way of governing.
And the pyramid way of economics, yes.
Yes, and of governance.
Mm-hmm.
So I go back to Bucky Fuller, who always asks the question, how can we make a world that works on behalf of all mankind, on behalf of we as individuals, the people, and the planet? What are our options? What are our possibilities? What solutions do we always have? Because I believe we have the solutions, options, and possibilities right now. Right now. What are they in education, in environment, in governance? Why can't we explore the commons, direct democracy? There are people talking about urban gardens, permaculture.
Let me cut you off because we're coming up on the commercial break. I want to answer your question. The problem right now is those who are in power are dead set against allowing us to make any changes to the system at all because the system favors them. We're going to have to sit quietly and patiently and let this system collapse the way the Soviet Union did. Then we're going to have a chance to set some new things up. And there are lots of good ideas out there about crowdsourcing the voting process to keep it honest, crowdsourcing, returning control of curriculum to the local community. There's all kinds of things we can be doing, and we need to follow that original template of the Constitution that power should not be concentrated anywhere but diffuse across the states, the communities, and that central government is a referee ringleader only and is never allowed to grow further than that. And finally, no more private central banks ever, 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 ever. Thank you for the phone call, Christy. We've got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment. Breaking story here. This is from Jeremy Ko, and North Korea correspondent for Channel News Asia. Apparently, North Korea orders foreign journalists be ready to move out at 6:20 a.m. tomorrow. It is actually already 8 a.m. tomorrow in Seoul, in Korea right now. So we don't know if the attack is on or what the heck is going on, but it looks like they're going to distract from the collapse of the Syria propaganda by launching a war on North Korea with more propaganda. And this thing is going to spiral completely out of control. Now, apparently Facebook has finally rolled out their new false news program where people who are still using Facebook, both of them, can hit that little down arrow, chevron, on a story, and underneath where it says report the post, there is now an option to select this is a false news story. There are two problems with it. First of all, I did a quick search for stories about Assad gassed his own people. They're all labeled as true. Second, Facebook is not even taking responsibility for deciding what is or is not fake news. They're letting readers decide and for themselves, and you don't know who's doing it. This is wide open for hacking and rigging by people who want certain things to be hidden from the American people. And that's another reason to just stop using Facebook and go on to some of the new alternatives that are coming up, like Scene Life and Gab and VK and the rest of that. Just stop using these sellout established social media. They are literally as corrupted as the corporate media is right now. So, my goodness, what interesting times we are living in. It's come out that one of the victims of that Stockholm attacker, the guy drove into the crowd, one of the people who was a victim was a psychiatrist who was committed to helping asylum seekers facing deportation. They ran down one of their allies. Just incredible here. Another article coming out, it's a YouTube video. The U.S. invasion of Syria began 5 years ago. Yes, it did. Yes, it did. The U.S. has been trying to get rid of Bashar al-Assad for almost 6 years. We found that document going all the way back to 1983, and they were talking about regime change in Syria when Assad's father was running the place. This is not about chemical weapons. It's about money. It's about oil pipeline rights of way. It's about a nation that has lost its manufacturing, and nobody wants to buy the GMO agriculture. And the only way they can keep their empire afloat is to conquer new provinces and soak up their wealth the way ancient Rome did. And we know how that worked out in the long run. We are on a path to disaster for this nation. I hate to see it happen, but this nation has unfortunately become something very ugly. It is certainly not the nation I was taught that I lived in. It's not the nation I thought I saw before my eyes when I was very young. Maybe I was being fooled back then, but we won't be fooled again. There's the music. Time to get out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. Please make a point of taking these stories, especially the ones about the gas attack actually came from a Saudi-Israeli base in Jordan. Spread them all over your social media. We have to shout the propagandists and liars down. We're talking about stopping World War III, and I need you to help me do it. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.